Welcome back, everyone, to the Burnout Club. This is a place where we dissect burnout and success one expert and experiment at a time. I'm your host, Patrice Bonfiglio, and today I am joined by Stacy DiStefano. Stacy, welcome to the Burnout Club.
Thank you for having me. What a great subject.
Yes, and Stacy is the founder and CEO of Consulting for Human Services. So she is a spot-on guest for this podcast. You are a mental health clinician. You're a founder, an entrepreneur. You're a strategist for boards and execs. And the list actually does go on forever. You have so many different avenues and credentials. So why don't I flip it over to you? You can tell me who you are, what you do, and how you want to kick off the conversation.
Yeah, great. I'm a mental health clinician by training. I did that for many decades, worked my way up from direct care into executive roles, was COO of a couple of multi-state provider organization, was chief strategy officer of another. And then after leading teams of residential care through the pandemic, I decided in 2021 that I was going to start my own consulting firm. I had always done some side consulting, and there were lots of things that pointed me in the direction of wanting to be my own boss and kind of make my own culture, corporate culture, after experiencing multiple kinds over the years. So I did that and thought maybe I would do it for a year and told my husband at the end of the year, we'll be able to pay our bills and then I'll get a real job. And within about 3 months, I had to hire folks. Within a year, we had almost a dozen people on our team. And now we are a multi-million-dollar firm with full-time SMEs and about 55 folks around the country. We represent provider organizations in the US and the largest disability provider in Japan.
That's a phenomenal story. I love it. So we kick it off with success. That's great.
Well, yeah, a lot of failure along the way, but hopefully ultimately success.
Yeah, it's good to actually pepper in that warning label for people. So why don't you tell us about your burnout journey if you have something there to share, since you've had experienced so many different types of experiences? What do you want the listeners to know?
Yeah, I think for me, when I look back, it's really about kind of reframing the traditional structure of success and making it work for you. So, through that time of the pandemic, I started a new job as COO of a provider organization providing 7 states of intellectual disability and mental health services. So for folks not in the industry, that looks like group homes, residential care for folks that rely on that caregiver as a life or death situation. And I started that job January 6th of 2020. Talk about diving into the fire. We know the pandemic came right after. So I was new in the role, a new executive. I joined a very well-formed executive team. So I was, kind of the outsider coming in. So I had to make my way navigating those relationships and then leading thousands of employees that supported hundreds of people in 7 states with critical care through the pandemic. I ended up being on our COVID response team and leading some of those efforts all the way through my teams were responsible for getting folks vaccinated in the early days, having the clinics, to making sure shifts were covered, to we set up a kind of a COVID respite care for folks in the group homes that, were ill. And this was a 7-day-a-week, 24/7 job that I had taken away from my home in Philadelphia. I had an apartment in Baltimore where the headquarters were. So I dove into a pandemic in a new executive role, leading critical care services away from home, away from my family, and did that, for almost 2 years. So at the end of that, the burnout was real.
It was real. Burnout.
The burnout was real. And it was at a point in my career where I had just turned 50. There was a lot of life reflection happening. And I just thought, where do I want to do? Where do I want to be? Is this something I want to continue? And what hasn't worked for me in the past? And what's not working for me now? And so it was really an inflection point where I didn't say, gee, I want to be an entrepreneur and start a company. It just started with wanting a break.
Yeah. That makes complete sense. Yeah. And there's probably a lot of listeners right now that are feeling that exact same thing. So what is the first step that either you took or people should take when they feel that feeling?
So I did some, I had some great sounding board folks in my corner, and I just said, I need to walk through what I want the future to be. The next third of my career is the last third. It's the reality, and I want to make it meaningful and high impact. But I also want it to be successful, right? Financially and emotionally and otherwise. And so when I thought about the pieces of my job and of my work and the whole body of work of my career, what were the things I loved? And what were the things that I really don't want to have to do again? And if you start with that basic list, the main thing for me truly is that I am not an early bird. And having an 8 o'clock call or having even a 9 o'clock meeting, it ruins my day. You know, it does. It sounds dramatic, but I actually don't sleep well at night if I have to get up early because I'm dreading, I'm not productive, I'm crabby, I'm not creative. It's truly a thing. And I'm very productive as the day goes on. And so the afternoon, early evening, I have been known many, many nights to have dinner. My husband goes to bed and I'm up till 1 o'clock in the morning, just cranking out creative, productive, amazing work. And so why am I continuing to shove myself in this like archetype of what a successful career is if that just doesn't work for me? So it just started with sort of building a framework of if I could have any career designed the way I want it, what would that look like?
I've seen you talk a little bit about like the non-traditional work schedule. Is that what you are referencing? Like the
Yeah.
timing?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think we have to sort of settle once and for all that there's no such thing as a work-life balance, right?
Yes.
Balance is a myth. There is no balance, right? There can be harmony,
Hmm.
there can be peace with your choices,
Hmm.
but nothing about life has balance to it. So there's this intentionality about aligning your energy, your effort, your creativity, with your boundaries. And so for me, it was about like setting that boundary. So I don't do any meetings before 10 a.m. I just don't.
And people adapt to that. When you have those hard, fast rules,
Yeah.
everyone adjusts because at a fundamental level, you get it, right? Do people really love having early morning calls? No.
Some, I guess, but not me. But also, I came to this point where I thought, well, no one knows if I start at 8 or 10, they could just think I'm not available because I have other meetings. There's like you have to get rid of this sort of shame attached to saying your preference. My preference is 10 a.m. and after. And
Hmm.
that's when I do, and not that I don't work before, but I do. I read a number of things, journals and market intelligence in more during my coffee and my morning solitary
Hmm.
piece, but I
Yeah.
don't want to speak to someone else until
Yeah.
10 a.m. And so
Yeah.
structuring that, there's nothing wrong with that. And that has really, I think, enhanced my success when I started to stop apologizing for what I wanted my day to look like. So that's
Yeah.
the beginning of the non-traditional for me is really just setting that boundary and not apologizing about it, not being flexible about it.
I love that. I love that. So I think for me and for all the listeners, what are you apologizing for that you really don't need to, right?
Yeah,
Instead,
exactly.
make
Yeah,
it something that is a preference for functionality, right? So
that's
if you're
right.
at your peak, then everybody really wins there. So I'm going to jot that down. That's a question for me.
Yeah. And then it goes to your team, So when I decided to build this team, what I wanted to do is not just have that selfishly for me, but I wanted the culture of our team to be okay to work within the structure and the boundary of when you're creative and to find that harmony. So for example, we have someone on our team who is a critical part of our success, and she has young children, and it's really important for her to take them to school in the morning and to pick them up in the afternoon. So she doesn't work between 8 and 9 and 3 and 4. And I'm fine when we work around that. And not that there's
Agreed.
not a one off once in a while, but really we try to honor that. And then
Yeah.
she will kind of tap back in at night when her kids go to bed and do the work to catch up. And it's not an issue.
Yeah.
And we're a better, stronger team because we allow for those kind of preferences.
Now that you mentioned, you also are supporting either you have employees or you're supporting services in Japan, you kind of get more and more used to
Yeah.
boundaries and non-negotiables where you're in a completely different time zone. Like things do have to adjust. So
Yeah,
you work hard to make it all work for everyone.
that's right.
I also loved something I found from you, your guiding mantra in life. Can you share it with
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
came from my grandmother, who was a force in my life. She, my Italian grandmother, she lived with us when I was younger and was a very strong presence, wonderful throughout my whole life. And it was really, you get what you tolerate.
It's a good
Mhm.
mantra.
It
And
is.
for me, I think there's two buckets, right? There's what do I tolerate because I've justified it in my mind for some
Hmm.
reason? And also, what do I tolerate because I am just on autopilot?
Yeah,
And most people probably have those same buckets. So
that's right.
everyone listening, what are your what are your
Yeah.
answers? You deserve it to ask yourself that question.
That's right. I mean, sometimes we find ourselves in situations that we've created, and the barrier keeping us unhappy is ourself, is the belief system we've adopted that is just not true or not necessary. So I'm a big fan of like figuring out if you're in your own way.
If you consider that for a second, like, is it possible that I'm in my own way? The answer is probably yes.
Yeah.
so so
Yeah.
then we're responsible for removing it.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. I mean, there's not one way to be successful. And
Mhm.
so I think this is really about creating and navigating the way that you want to work and live, and just only saying yes to things that support that.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I've tried to be more cognizant of saying yes and saying no instead of just like the gut reaction of always yes.
Yeah.
So it's hard. I still have to think about it every single time, but at least I am thinking about it.
Hmm.
What was the um what was the most recent shift you made in how you think about either yourself or your company or even your vision for the future?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think for me and starting this company, I saw this quote the other day that I shared with some of my founder friends, and it was so, it resonated so deeply with me. It was like the version of yourself you needed to be to start a company is not the version of yourself that will scale the company. And we're definitely in the scale mode, and it does require a different version. So I think about that, like the future of this company, it's no longer just like something I started for a year to pay the bills. This is something I love that people rely on, that we have employees and clients, and I want to continue well beyond me. And so I think the difference now is how do I bring others into the front of the organization so that it's not my name attached to the work we're doing, it's the team.
Is that emotionally difficult?
Oh my gosh, yes. I mean, self-admitted control freak, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, for we had last year was the first time that we had clients that came in through some referral process, engaged with our team, contracted for a deliverable, did the work, and then successfully ended the work, and I never met them.
Oh, wow.
And
That's a huge transition.
that is terrifying. Yes. Yes, but it's terrifying to me when I think about, the way that I used to operate, but that's exactly what I want. I mean, I have a great mentor right now who will constantly push me to say, when I say something I'm thinking or doing or a process, he'll say, is that sustainable when you're 5 times your size? And the answer is no. Like when you're do you think the head of Deloitte or McKinsey or Accenture knows every client they've had? Of course not.
The answer is no.
The answer is no, but you have to create a culture and a team that represents your values and your quality of work and trust that.
Mhm.
And so I think for me, the biggest hurdle right now is getting over the wince of like, oh, I don't have a hand in that. But you know what? That's exactly what I want.
I'm really happy for you that you're getting that. And it's nice to see someone successfully navigating that transition too. I see plenty of disasters with that.
Yeah.
Um, so you give us all hope.
Oh gosh. Well, I'm not sure my team would say it's always effortless, but
Yeah.
I think that the piece that I appreciate about them is, the team, that psychological safety is really important to me.
Mhm.
And so my team will say, "We got this."
Yeah.
When I lean in too far, it's like,
Hmm.
we'll let you know if we need,
Yeah.
we so they push back appropriately to sort of keep me out
Hmm.
of the weeds, and I need that and I appreciate that.
Yeah. I might have been late to the game with the term psychological safety, but I once I heard it last year, I just like this. this is exactly what I've been talking about, especially, in the world of activism and,
Oh, yeah.
changing up boards and dealing with management teams. Just, you have to have psychological safety. Change and transitions cannot be smooth unless people feel like there is valid trust.
That's
And,
right.
and it can be as small as just you and, a team of, one other person or large scale organizations. So how do you establish psychological safety?
I mean, I think it takes a while for people to trust that you mean it when you say, I don't want everyone to agree with me all the time. Right?
Hmm.
Because people always say that, but what
Yeah.
they mean is, nod your head and say yes, because I really
Yeah.
want to be in charge. So I think sometimes it's modeling that.
Mhm.
And then for folks who feel hesitant, for me, I think it's important to share in conversation, to say, oh yeah, so and so and I really disagreed on this. And we're going to come back to talk about it after we think about each other's perspective, or to share with the rest of the team, especially if there are folks more junior, to let them watch you sort of argue it out in a very respectful, safe way. Because
Yeah.
not everybody has all the answers and not everyone is right all the time. And you're losing that perspective of the team of experts you brought in if you're only thinking about your own way. And it's mentally exhausting to think about only, I mean, who wants to just decide everything all the time, right?
Very true. I don't even want to decide where I'm going to dinner.
No, no, absolutely. Absolutely. So I think it's the modeling of that and the being willing to sort of show your team that, like, yeah, this is what disagreeing with me looks like and feels like, and it's okay to do it. And doesn't mean I'm always going to change my mind, but I often do say, you know what? I didn't think about that. You're right. Let's do it that way.
Yeah, you're connecting the dots for me because I try to operate that way so that our kids can see it when my husband and I disagree. I
Yeah.
want them to know what healthy
Yes.
discussion is when you don't agree, and that you can concede and collaborate and have some sort of resolution without animosity. So I
Yeah.
model that for them, and it's a great suggestion to model that or have that done in front of staff, especially the junior folks. Yeah, because I
Yeah, for
can see that
sure.
then people believe it because they saw it.
They saw it. And also, I think that's the hindrance. I mean, my team is all remote and we always have been. But that is the thing that's lost to me in the virtual workplace is
Mhm.
you don't have an ability to teach executive presence,
Mm,
and you don't have the ability to have someone sit near you and listen to you during the day to sort of model that communication. So I think that's a nuance that's lost. I mean, I love virtual. I will never go back to an office setting, just for the record.
yeah.
But I do think we have to work harder to mentor our folks and teach them those skills, that it's really hard when you hang up,
Mhm.
you hang up the Zoom, they don't see then the process of how do you manage the frustration of a tough conversation, or what do you do next? Or
Yeah.
so I think as leaders, we have to be more intentional about carrying that all the way through and making sure folks have the opportunity to learn, from that communication.
I think every firm is struggling with that. What have you found works the best to try to show executive presence and, also just like you're saying, emotionally, how to deal with, nerves leading up to an important call or frustration and when something goes wrong? How have you been able to translate that for the newer, younger members on your team?
The AI recordings are just an absolute gift to our industry in so many ways. And so we have an AI note taker on all of our Zoom calls. We have it for note taking, obviously, and
Yeah.
minutes and next steps and things like that. But it's also an incredible leadership tool, because I can have a call with someone, a client, maybe that's a tough conversation. Maybe it's about a misalignment of expectations or whatever the case is. And I can share that call and say, I want you to see, not everything is great with all of our clients. And this was a situation where, maybe we came up short and we had to apologize, or
Yeah.
maybe the client was wrong, or, whatever the situation, maybe we had a miscommunication about something. But to send that video, to actually have the team watch that, is really powerful. And I've also used that, during group calls with client facing teams and internal teams, especially more junior staff or folks who are learning those skills, to recount their performance and say, I want you to look at this again. And here's where I thought you sort of diminished yourself and you could sit up straighter and you had a lot to say. You could have been more powerful there, but I saw you shrink away. Let's talk about why you did that. And I want next time for you to feel more confident because you know what you're saying and you did the work and you're capable and you contribute. So I think even letting folks watch themselves is a useful exercise as long as you're giving that feedback behind it. And then the last thing I'll say is I used to try to protect my team's hard conversations I would have, right? I have a board, I have folks I report to, I have clients. And now I realize the benefit of going to them and saying, like, wow, this was tough and I felt stressed and I didn't like this feedback, or here's what I think I might need to change. What do you think about this? Do you think that was fair feedback? Do you think I need to shift? But
Yeah.
bringing them into also what I'm feeling in
Mhm.
conversations they may not see.
But that's great advice because I've really been trying to figure out ways to kind of sustainably build up that executive presence that you're talking about in when you have large teams. And I think that's key. You know, thank God for AI in that aspect of it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's harder to dispute, what someone's saying or feedback when you're watching
Mhm.
it,
Yeah.
when
Mhm.
you're on a replay. I will say though, I mean, I don't want to make this sound easy and, rose-colored glasses. This is hard.
Yeah.
It's a lot of
Absolutely.
work to give that feedback and to be
Mhm.
committed to your team. But I think the benefit is then you build this high performing group of people that are all rowing in the same direction and it's worth it. But it is a lot of work in the making.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, how do you recharge yourself after really investing time and energy in conversations like that and in being vulnerable and letting them into what it's like to be the founder, be the executive?
I think I have become very protective of my time away.
Hmm.
Last year my job is very mobile. I'm present with clients and speaking at events. Last year I was on the road 113 days of the year. This year I know. This year I thought I would do less and it's actually turning out to probably be more, which is a good problem, but it's draining. And so
Yeah.
on top of the physical stress of being in airplanes and being in time zones and in hotels and sometimes there's 15-hour days when you're at an event and there's a dinner and there's meetings afterward and there's not a lot of sleep. I've had to be really protective about my sleep and my time. And that's part of why this no 10 a.m., start. It works for
Yeah.
me because I know I'm creative at night and I want to get work done. So I'm
Yeah.
up late and I need to sleep. I need rest. I've also been better about prioritizing my eating and trying to be more mindful about, what I eat. And that
Yeah.
does make a big difference. But at the end of a week where I'm back to back meetings and travel and all of those things, I will often take a whole day and block it off, maybe once or twice a month, where you just have to disconnect and do something that has nothing to do with work.
I mean, that's one just to say that's a lot of days on the road.
It is. It
Uh,
is.
so, when do you find that you can recharge at all when you are traveling, or does it have to be when you get back?
It depends. I mean, it's usually pretty frantic
Hmm.
as far as the pace. I just came back from 2 days at a state I had to fly to. I spoke at the event, and then there's a happy hour, then there's prospective client meetings, and you want to, maximize every minute you're there. But
Yeah.
in the breaks, you're trying to answer emails and answer your team and,
Hmm.
check in with your family.
Yeah.
There's all those things that don't happen in a vacuum. Time doesn't stand still
Yeah.
because, I'm somewhere out of town. So I've had to reprioritize that, but I do try to take, some time and just go back to the room and,
Hmm.
have an hour where I'm just sort of shoes off laying on the bed and, looking at social media or pictures of my granddaughter or something that really anchors you back into just a peaceful mindset.
I like that word. I'm going to try to formalize the anchor process. I think that would be helpful for me. Just traveling often, it's the same struggle, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
Although this one doesn't have anything to do with burnout, but I am interested for someone that travels so often. Do you have any packing or travel
Oh, yeah.
tips or hacks? Like, what's the best thing
Oh
that
my
you do?
gosh. Yeah, so I have a double set of things. And so
Hmm.
I have like my toiletries, my favorite pajamas, my travel clothes. I sort
Hmm.
of have this travel uniform, and it's always either packed or ready to be packed. It doesn't get mixed in with my other things. So when I have to go somewhere, it's not a heavy lift to start from scratch. I'm probably two-thirds of the way there. I just have to figure out what I'm wearing at the event.
Yeah.
So I do that. I always pack flip flops because if you want to run to downstairs to get coffee at the hotel or somewhere, you don't have to be fully dressed with shoes inside. Just
Yeah.
little hacks like that make it easier.
Yeah.
But I do try to absolutely model the exact same things I have at home. So I
Hmm.
don't use like a different version of something. It's
Yeah.
really consistent with all of those things. And then to me, always travel with a little portable white noise machine
Oh, interesting.
because you never know who's opening and closing a hotel room door, if there's
Yeah.
noise or if it's too quiet or whatever the case is. So I white noise at home, so I white noise away. So it
Yeah.
really feels the same.
Are they small
And
these days? I just remember them from my kids being young and they were like this.
yeah, no, it's the size of I don't know, like well, I don't know what I would say this size, like
Like a
maybe a
bagel?
couple inches. Yeah, it's
Oh,
small.
okay. Oh,
Yeah, it's
that's doable
small.
then.
Yeah, think of like a small jarred candle. That's kind of how big it is. It's not big at all.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, you can Amazon one of those. It's inexpensive, it's portable, it's easy.
Yeah, because like you're saying, sleep when you're traveling, it's a
Critical.
must. It's a
It's a
must.
must. Yeah.
Um, I also wanted to ask you about what is pure fun for you? What do you really, really enjoy that revitalizes
Yeah. Well, I mean, my granddaughter obviously like
you?
knowing I'm going to get to see her. She is 7 months old and the most fun. It's just immeasurable. But I
Yeah.
do love I like a spa day. Like I
Hmm.
live for like a facial and a massage. I do get a facial every month. It is
Oh,
an
nice.
incredibly relaxing hour for me. I love to have a spa day and I love just to walk in a city. So I'm kind of a geek about whenever I am somewhere new, I
Yeah.
like to just check out the downtown or wherever it is and
Hmm.
just make sure I carve out some time to just walk around and see new things. Like if there's shopping involved, even better.
Yeah.
But just checking out. I mean, I'm really just so curious about travel and where
Hmm.
people live and how people live. And that is exciting for me to get to see so many places around the country and the world of what everyone's day to day is like. Because I live in Philadelphia, I live in the middle of a giant city. And it's interesting when you go outside of a city to see what that life is like. So I do really enjoy that.
Yeah, I forgot you're in Philly. I
Mhm.
used to live there for 5 years.
Yeah,
But that's why I saw on your sheet you're an avid Philly sports fan.
I am. I
And
am.
I don't
Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. I'll
that's
remind everyone.
yeah, we have to change the yeah. Are there any other versions of Philly fans other than avid? I feel like that's there's no
No,
spectrum.
no, there isn't. You're right. That's right. There isn't. That's sort of the table stakes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Well, so do you have any visions that you have for yourself coming up? And it could be personal or from a business standpoint.
Yeah, I think my goal over the next 2 years professionally is to get to a point in our business that it operates fully without me.
Mhm.
So not that I want to disengage from it,
Yeah.
but if I wanted to take a month off or eventually go to part-time, in retirement, that the business can operate at a high level without my day-to-day involvement. And we're taking steps to get there. We're certainly not there yet, but and I'm being really clear with the team that that's my goal. And so for professionally, that's it. I mean, I'd love to have a life where I could pick the things I want to do and really work, I'd say 5 more years full time and
Yeah.
then the rest of my life, because I love what I do, on a part time basis. So that really is the goal for me.
Do you feel like the big visions like that, should they be something that is on the optimistic side, or do you think big visions and goals that scare you are is that a warning sign if it scares you, or is that something that's okay?
No, I think where you do your best work is in the scared zone,
Okay.
right? I mean, I don't think anything ever evolved from comfort.
Yeah.
It's when we step out of that we say like, wow, I mean, doing this, I would never, if you said 10 years ago, you're going to leave a successful C-suite career with benefits and stability and all these things to start your own company from scratch, I would have said, why would I ever do that?
Yeah.
And now I say, why didn't I do this sooner? I wish I would have done this 10 years ago. So
Yeah.
I think it's when you just sort of step outside of what you think is possible, the limiting belief,
Yeah.
like there is no limit. We can all do anything, right? And
Yeah.
that's the thing I would say is, there's, when you think about like the quote, seat at the table, almost every time in my career, when I've got to the table, like the table isn't any better than I am. I mean, we've, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
like, why was I afraid of this? Or why did I think this was somehow this attainable goal? It's like, no, I actually want to go way past this. This is
Yeah.
not where I thought it was. So I've been wildly disappointed by the table every time I finally got the chair. So I think it's really about just why did we think that, especially as women, like why did we think that like some predetermined idea of what success should be, like we make that for ourselves and that changes constantly.
And I've had the same, like being at a literal table. I'm just like,
Yeah,
I could have done this years
I could
ago.
have done this years ago. Absolutely right. I could have done this years ago. Yeah. Yeah. And not that I didn't have respect and, gratitude and all of those things for folks along the way, because I absolutely do. I've had amazing mentors and people that I've looked up to that still I look up to. But, I just love the generation below mine. I mean, I love the generations, the late 20s, the 30s, because they just, to me, like they don't have that, oh my gosh, that reverence for the table.
Yeah.
And I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, that's a great point. Oh, so now does your, I guess, life or business advice change for that generation since they're not struggling with the same thing? They've seemed to kind of conquer some of the complexes that older generations have. And is it right? You have 6 kids?
We did. My husband and I had 6 together. I had 4, he had 2, and
Oh,
they're
okay.
all adults and out of the house and all the things now. But yeah,
Yeah.
we've been together 17 years, so it was an interesting journey along the way. Yes.
So, what is your advice like for the generation where your kids are coming up in?
I think it's been interesting watching them because I've also had to change my idea of what success looks like for them, right, over the years.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I have for instance, I have a daughter who is a mental health counselor in an elementary school. She works with ESL population, an inner city population. I see the work that she puts into those kids. It's unbelievable. She is the cheerleading coach and the soccer coach and puts on the pageants and does the food pantry because no one else is there. She steps in time and time again. And I think that's incredible. And works for pennies, which is a disgrace in our nation, but that's another podcast. And so to me, it's like she is so successful in my mind and she's making her path. And I've no doubt she'll go on to do other things, but maybe not like financially successful because she's chosen a career that isn't well reimbursed, but she has the respect of her peers. She has the respect of her administration. I'm so proud of her. It's incredible. And then my son, they're actually twins, is a tattoo artist and he has his own LLC and does his own work. And certainly when he was growing up, there's no scenario where I would have thought that would be a great career I'd want him to have, right? But the reality is he doesn't fit in a traditional business world and he never fit into traditional academics and didn't have success there, but he's wildly talented and creative at what he does and is very successful in that way, and he's happy and he loves it. So isn't that the best definition of success? So I think that generation is figuring it out sooner, whereas I took into be 50 years old before I said, you know what, this kind of career isn't what I want to end in. I want to do my own.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe we'll just bypass the whole midlife crisis.
Yeah, I highly recommend bypassing it. Yeah, so I think this generation, like, keep up the good work
Mhm.
of deciding for yourself what success looks like. I think where I would say maybe spend a little more time in the weeds in there's value in that executive presence. And sometimes I hear that generation thinking like, well, we don't want to speak like that or follow those norms or do those rules. And it's like, I get that, but learn it first before you decide you don't want it.
That's fair. That's great advice. Oh, and now with the clients that you have, what advice do you have for them? Like if you could just, I guess, completely get rid of all of their tendencies and preconceived notions, like what would you want them to take away? Maybe it's an uncomfortable truth or just like a new norm. Like what would you want?
I think broadly, and not necessarily applying to my clients directly, but I think the industry of human services. So
Mhm.
that is mental health, disabilities, long term care, social work, social service type roles that I think folks stay in it too long. And so there's oftentimes a leader who has been in their role or been with their organization for 40 years or 30 years. And to me, I think what I love about 2025 work culture is we've normalized, 2 to 3 years in a role. That's a long time in your role. I mean, when I was first entering the workforce, like in the 1900s, 30 years ago, people, my parents, my dad, like you got a job and you stayed in that job until you retired. And why? You know what I mean? Why did we do that? And so I think about this generation of leadership normalizing that 3 years is an appropriate amount of time to be in a role. And I think there's something to be said for changing that up. Like certainly long-term leadership has a place and I think it's good. But I mean the idea of term limits, right, but congressionally certainly, but also in our roles, like a fresh perspective is a good idea.
Now, is there anything else that you want to leave with the listeners? You've actually shared quite a lot, and I don't often make notes as I'm talking to guests, but I jotted a few things down.
No.
Um,
I have a little shared folder on my phone that I keep these little kind of sound bites of truth, whether they're on social media or I hear someone say something, and I create this album of things that I look through when I need a little inspiration or if I'm stressed or feeling frustrated. And I think there's so much to consume, right? And I only have LinkedIn and Instagram. I
More than
cannot make
enough.
any space for Twitter, X, TikTok, all the things. I can't do that. I'm a failed podcast listener. I mean, I try to do little pieces of it, but I can't commit to anything long term. I can't watch a show or a series. It feels like a burden. But
Yeah.
I can do these little like this little collection of things. And so I think it's about just being okay with whatever works for you and leaning into that. Don't try to do all the things just because everyone does all the things or because all the things are available, right? You don't need to eat from the whole buffet. Just take the things that you really love and make those work for you.
Only bad things happen if you eat
Yeah,
everything at
I
the
mean,
buffet.
you can't eat one of everything. You can't possibly, there's only so many hours in the day,
Yeah.
and I don't want to water them down with things that I'm not really passionate about. And I think the older I get,
Yeah.
the more unapologetic I am about that. Like if it doesn't serve me, it's a no thank you.
Hmm.
And I don't really give any more thought to that. I don't have any guilt around that anymore.
Yeah. So what is everyone saying? No, thank you to.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I love when someone invites me to something that it doesn't appeal to me or doesn't fit in my time or I just don't want to. And
Mhm.
I'm so comfortable saying, I so appreciate you thinking of me, but that's not something I'm going to be able to do at this time. And you're done. Like you
Yeah.
don't need a long-winded, stressful answer. It's
Hmm.
wonderful to be asked and it's perfectly okay to say no.
Yeah. Yes. I agree. Couldn't agree more. Oh, this is fantastic. Thank you, Stacy. I've loved every minute of our conversation. If the listeners want to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
Probably LinkedIn, since that's my only
Yeah.
and believe it or not, there's another Stacy DiStefano in healthcare. So I use
Oh,
my maiden name. So Stacy Olson DiStefano on LinkedIn. And I love to connect with folks and hear their stories about how they're navigating.
perfect. Okay, we'll put all of that in the show notes. Thank you, listeners. Remember to like and subscribe and watch and listen. And please connect with Stacy. So, everyone, thank you so much. Enjoy the day.
Thanks for having me.